Hey, everybody, welcome to our deep dive. Today, we're going to kind of dig into this question of kindness, especially in a leadership context. I mean, does it actually work? Like, does kindness really get you results, or is it just like all that fluffy, feel-good stuff?
That is the big question, isn't it? And I think you've got a pretty fascinating stack of sources here to dig into.
Yeah, definitely. Everything from like classic wisdom from Dale Carnegie to some modern research on leadership and psychology should be a good time.
For sure.
Okay, so let's just jump right in. This anecdote from the APM series on leadership really caught my attention.
Yeah.
It's about Walt Disney. And not just any Walt Disney, but like young Walt pitching bankers on building, wait for it, $1 billion empire on a mouse.
Wow.
Right. And some fairy tales. I mean, could you imagine being in that room?
I mean, talk about vision, right? That's what's so striking about that story. Not just the audacity of the idea itself, but like Disney's complete and unwavering belief in his vision.
Yeah, it's like he just knew it was going to work.
Exactly. And the source goes on to say that this kind of vision, that it often stems from a deep dissatisfaction with the status quo. It's like, this isn't good enough. We can do better. And that's the fuel, that passion to create something truly remarkable.
And that passion is kind of contagious, isn't it?
Absolutely. It's what inspires others to buy into your vision, to put in the grit, to make it a reality. It's like, think about any time you've been truly motivated by a leader. It's rarely about the paycheck, is it?
No, it's more about believing in something bigger.
Exactly. Believing in the mission, the impact you're making together.
Absolutely. Which brings us to the study from the Center for Creative Leadership. It's also cited in this APM source. They found that the one thing that separates truly effective leaders, from the rest, was that they genuinely cared about their people.
It's a powerful finding, because it really challenges those traditional notions of leadership, like the whole tough as nails, results at all costs mentality. This study suggests that true leadership, it's rooted in something far deeper. It's a genuine concern for the well-being of your team, their development.
Okay, so it's not just about being nice.
Right.
It's about actually caring.
It's about understanding your team's values, their aspirations, their challenges. It's about building trust, creating an environment where people feel safe to take risks, to share their ideas, to grow professionally and personally.
And the source goes on to say that ignoring this soft stuff, it can have pretty serious consequences. They point to the high rate of mergers that flop because of clashes in values and big egos.
Yeah. When we prioritize purely financial or strategic goals, over the human element, we're essentially setting ourselves up for failure. It's like trying to build a house without a foundation. You might get the structure up, but it's not going to last.
So how do we actually cultivate this caring, this genuine interest in our team?
Well, one of the most powerful ways is through appreciation. And I love this story from Dale Carnegie. It's about Teddy Roosevelt. Apparently, before a guest arrived, Teddy Roosevelt would stay up late, researching their interests.
Really? Wow. Going the extra mile. But why would he do that?
Because he understood that the key to connecting with people is to show genuine interest in what matters to them. William James, the psychologist, put it beautifully. He said, "The deepest principle in human nature is the craving to be appreciated."
And that's so true. Like, think about how good it feels when someone acknowledges your efforts, sees your potential, makes you feel truly valued.
And this appreciation, it isn't just about making people feel good, right? It's about unlocking their potential, inspiring them to bring their best selves to the table. Like you have another great example in your sources here about Stevie Wonder,
Oh, yeah.
the legendary musician. His teachers saw his potential, right? Specifically his talent for music, despite his blindness. And that simple act of recognition, of believing in his abilities, played a crucial role in shaping his extraordinary journey.
It's incredible how, like a small act of kindness, can have such a profound impact on somebody's life. But let's bring this back to leadership. How does this appreciation translate into action? How do we actually lead with kindness?
Well, it's about shifting your mindset, from what can they do for me to what can I do for them. And, you have some really great examples in your sources here about companies who've really successfully made this shift.
Yeah, this article about Nordstrom really stood out to me. They have this incredible reputation for prioritizing their people over policies. Like they really empower their employees to go above and beyond for their customers.
And what's so remarkable about Nordstrom is that this commitment to their people, it translates directly to their bottom line. I mean, their customer loyalty is incredible. Their employees are some of the most engaged in the retail industry. They've created this like virtuous cycle. Kindness breeds success, which breeds more kindness.
It's a really interesting model. I'm also reminded of John Wooden, the legendary UCLA basketball coach. I mean, the guy won more championships than anyone else. But he was also known for his leadership philosophy, you know, which was all about putting the needs of others ahead of your own.
Oh, he had that famous pyramid of success, right? With all the key building blocks, industriousness, enthusiasm, friendship, loyalty, cooperation, and then right at the very bottom, faith and patience. He believed that these values were essential for success, not just on the court, but in life.
So it's about building something bigger, you know, creating a culture that values those things: respect, integrity, kindness.
Exactly. And I think that's a really important point for leaders to remember. Our actions, our behaviors, they create this ripple effect. Throughout the whole organization, when we lead with kindness, we're not just setting a good example, we're shaping the culture itself.
Okay, so we've established that kindness matters. But what does it actually look like in practice? How do we do this? How do we lead with kindness?
Well, one of the most practical pieces of advice came from Life Learnings. They talk about leading by example. It's one thing to talk about kindness, it's another to actually embody it.
So walk the walk, not just talk the talk.
Exactly. And another source, Developing the Leader Within You, highlighted the importance of, clear, honest communication. When you're transparent with your team, when you keep them informed, when you're willing to have the tough conversations, it just builds trust and respect.
Creates that environment where people feel safe to be themselves, to share their ideas, to ask for help without being judged.
And, that psychological safety is essential for innovation, for creativity. When people feel supported and trusted, they're more likely to think outside the box, to take risks, come up with those game-changing ideas.
All right, let's shift gears for a second. Talk about something that I think a lot of people are probably wondering. Does being kind actually translate to better results? Does it make us more productive, more effective as leaders?
Well, there's actually a growing body of research that suggests it does. The book Get It Done talks about how positive emotions, they can fuel motivation. They can help people persevere through challenges.
So it's not just about feeling good, it's about getting stuff done.
Right. Kindness as a performance enhancer. They even cite this study where they tracked marathon runners, and they found that more people finished the race in 3 hours and 59 minutes than in 4 hours and 1 minute.
Really? Why is that?
Because we hate losses more than we love wins, that one extra minute over 4 hours feels like a huge loss, so people push themselves harder to avoid it. And, when you combine that understanding with a supportive, kind environment, you're creating this powerful recipe for success.
So it's about how you frame the challenge, in a way that motivates people to achieve those goals. But how does this translate into the workplace?
Well, think about like the classic Fitbit goal, right? 10,000 steps. It's this simple, clear target that gets people moving. Now, imagine applying that same principle to a work project. Instead of just saying, we need to increase sales by 10%, you say, we need to avoid losing 10% of our market share. Creates that sense of urgency, of shared purpose. It can be really powerful.
I see what you mean. This is all really fascinating, but I also feel like there's got to be some kind of downside here, right? Could leading with kindness be seen as weakness? Could it make it harder to make the tough calls, especially in a really competitive environment? Yeah, that's a great question, and it's something that Life's Learnings really digs into. They argue that true kindness, it isn't about being a pushover or avoiding conflict.
Right.
It's about having that courage to make those tough decisions, even when they're unpopular, that it's in the best interest of the team, the organization.
Yeah, it's about finding that balance, between compassion and accountability. And I think a key part of that is being really clear about your values, your goals, and what you're willing to compromise on.
So it's not about saying yes to everything. It's about making those strategic decisions, but with the well-being of your people in mind. But how do you know? Like when it's time to make those tough calls, how do you balance that kindness with the need to sometimes, quit on something that's just not working?
Well, that's where self-awareness comes in. Being honest with yourself about your strengths and weaknesses, and being willing to seek feedback from others. Really emphasize the importance of creating a culture of feedback, where people feel comfortable sharing their perspectives, the good and the bad. Yeah, that's so important because it creates that sense of psychological safety, where people feel like they can speak up without fear of retribution. And that leads to more open communication, better problem solving, and ultimately a more innovative and adaptable organization.
Yeah, but let's be honest, not every workplace is this like utopian paradise of open communication and, shared decision making. Conflicts happen, mistakes happen, and sometimes you just have to deliver that tough feedback. How do you navigate those waters? with kindness?
Well, one of the sources, again, Life's Learnings, had a really insightful section on this, on judgment and criticism. It talked about how important it is to try to understand why people do what they do, rather than jumping to conclusions or condemning them.
So seek first to understand, then to be understood.
Right, exactly. And, it takes practice. It's not always easy, but the source also talked about how focusing on praise over criticism can be incredibly powerful. When you highlight what people are doing right, rather than dwelling on their shortcomings, it just creates a much more positive and supportive environment.
And doesn't it also make people more receptive to that constructive criticism when they know that you also see and appreciate their strengths?
Exactly. It's about finding that balance. And, if you do need to deliver constructive feedback, it's important to do it in a way that's respectful, specific, focused on helping that person improve.
So be direct but kind. And remember that everyone makes mistakes. It's part of being human.
Right.
And speaking of being human, one of the sources had this really fascinating discussion about what was it called? The spotlight effect.
Oh, yeah, that's a good one. It's the idea that we tend to overestimate how much other people notice us, both our successes and our failures.
So we're all walking around with these imaginary spotlights on us.
Pretty much.
I mean, it's kind of funny when you think about it,
right.
but it's also kind of freeing.
It is. It reminds us to take ourselves a little less seriously, be kinder to ourselves when we mess up and extend that same grace to others.
Which brings us back to that idea of inner work, right? Like cultivating those qualities of self-compassion and understanding. It can make us more effective and kinder leaders.
Absolutely. The way we treat ourselves, it really does influence how we treat others. And Life's Learnings Part 3 talks about the importance of developing both our, what they call performance character strengths and our moral character strengths.
Okay, those sound pretty intense. What exactly do those mean?
So performance character strengths, those are the qualities that govern our relationship with ourselves. Things like self-discipline, perseverance, and a commitment to continuous improvement.
So holding ourselves accountable to our own high standards.
Right. And then there are the moral character strengths, which govern our relationships with others. Values like honesty, fairness, compassion, a commitment to service.
So it's like having this internal compass that guides our actions, our interactions with the world. But how do we develop these character strengths? Is it something we're just born with, or can we cultivate it over time?
That's the good news. These strengths, they can be cultivated through conscious effort and practice. It's like building a muscle. The more we exercise these qualities, the stronger they become. And Life's Learnings Part 3 offers some really practical advice on how to do this.
Like what?
But they talk about the importance of reflecting on your values, identifying role models who embody those values, and setting small, achievable goals that challenge you to stretch outside of your comfort zone.
So it's not about becoming a saint overnight. It's about taking those small steps, making those conscious choices, and being patient with ourselves as we grow.
Exactly. Progress over perfection. It's about the journey, not the destination. And as we cultivate these strengths, we become more resilient, more compassionate, and more effective as leaders.
This has been such a great deep dive. I feel like we've gone way beyond just answering the question, does kindness matter in leadership? We've explored the why, the how, the what it takes to actually do it.
And I think the most important takeaway is that leading with kindness, it's not just a nice to have, it's essential for any leader who wants to create a thriving, sustainable organization.
And it's not just about the organization, right? It's about creating a more humane and compassionate world for everyone.
Well said. And I love this quote from Life Learnings Part 3. It says, "No act of kindness, however small, is ever wasted." So let's all go out there and be a little kinder, a little more compassionate, a little more courageous in our leadership. Who knows what kind of ripple effect we might create.
That's a great thought to end on. Until next time, everyone, stay curious, stay kind, and keep diving deep.